We're fighting over.
And we need to agree who is going to press record.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this. It's the 8th live debate of a series Maaike and I started in, I think it was April. We started this because back then I think like most people, we were anxious to talk about what was happening, and also we were seeing the response of the art world to the pandemic, and a lot of the response was mostly about bringing like online what was offline, but not really like discussing it or thinking how everything would change in terms of the arts response. So we started this in April, and the idea was to get people from all over the world, so get really a plural like a perspective, and we've been doing, that's the 8th series. We talked about technology, we talked about performance, we talked about display, we've talked about education, we've talked about collecting. And this one is about food, and we are very pleased with the panel we've got. I think we'll have a great discussion. And this is a project of Colecionista, which is my art consultancy, and it's a project that goes in line with ARCA. And the idea of ARCA is that it is a vehicle to connect us from a world that's perishing to the new worlds we're coming through the study of art. And so like we study art and we connect with these global contemporary challenges. And I think that's all what I wanted to say as an introduction. And I'll pass it on to Maaike, and I'm sure we'll have a great debate. Maaike, you have the mic.
Yeah, welcome everyone. It's really great to have you all on board. So I'll just give a bit of first a general or kind of a practical outline of how we're going to work, and then we'll introduce everyone. So what we do is we have the 5 panelists or groups that are going to talk with us a little bit, and everyone gets 2 minutes to say something about your situation, like how is the situation at the moment with COVID, how do you deal with it, did something change in the last week, or are you in lockdown, are you not in lockdown, anything that you want to say about it. And then you get a few minutes to tell a little bit, just an example or a story or a series of questions in connection to our topic, which is food. And João and I thought it would be interesting to talk about food because it's such an important element in our lives, and so many things are connected to food, and also so many artists are dealing with it in different constellations. So after these introductions, then we open the floor that we can have a conversation, and if there's a lot of time left, which almost never happens, then we can also have some questions from the audience. In the chat of the panel, we'll add some biographies and some links. And also as the audience, you can maybe comment or ask questions or give advice or anything you would like. So maybe I start with myself with the situation here in Amsterdam. And no, João and I always flip roles, and the first thing we should do is say who our panelists are and where they come from. So we have Geoffrey, Akpene, and Bierkro from Ghana.
Hello.
He raises his hand, and you're based in Kumasi. And we'll give the mic to you later. Then we have Shaela Sharmin from Chittagong in Bangladesh. There it's already 6 o'clock, I guess, yeah, in the evening. Then we have Onkruidenier from Amsterdam, Jonmar and Ronald. And we're going to see how this works as a collective. This is the first time we have 2 collectives, actually, so it's going to be interesting. And we have Liaoliao from Shanghai. She's a curator and created an exhibition that relates to food in a larger connection to the world and art. And then we have Shilvina Putri Vidatama, and who is part of Bakudapan, which is a collective in Indonesia, and you're both in Yogyakarta. And we have she didn't arrive yet, Katari, but she will join in whenever she's here. And then we're going to see how you're going to do your introduction or your little contribution. So that said, I'm in Amsterdam, and since a week we're in semi-lockdown again. And for the first time this year, I feel a little bit stuck, because in the spring I was in New Orleans and I was in a very big house where I had like animals and I could go outside. And for the first time, I started noticing why people got a little bit anxious during the first lockdown. And yeah, so I'm much more careful than I ever was. And I hope, but I don't let the pandemic rule my life too much. So I'm still going outside and still see people and still do meetings face to face. Yeah, that's my situation. Maybe João, you want to say two seconds of your situation in Sao Paulo, and then you give the mic to the next one.
Sure. In Sao Paulo, well, we've had like the state of Sao Paulo went to the green light, which means the looser, the less the less restriction of all the colors. Like the governor of Sao Paulo is giving different colors depending on how bad the pandemic is. So the green one is where the pandemic is affecting the least. And it may to do with the election that's coming like in a month's time. And but it is pandemic here is pretty bad. But at the same time, I don't think I was in Europe a few weeks ago, and it doesn't seem that it's being taken as seriously as it should be. And I think a lot of people are taking still normal lives. And we don't have the second wave as it's happening in Europe yet. And so we're kind of coming out of the first wave. Let's see how it goes. Should we go to Geoffrey? How is it in Ghana?
Yeah. So hi, this is Geoffrey from Ghana, Kumasi. Yeah. Well, we were in lockdown about a few months ago, but now the situation is much better. We are no more in lockdown, and there's no second wave. So, I mean, things are returning to normal, but people are still skeptical about how to relate after the lockdown. But gradually things are picking up, and yeah, I would say it's better than before. Yes, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Geoffrey.
Yeah.
Liaoliao, how is it in Shanghai?
Hello everyone, I'm Liaoliao from Shanghai. Yeah, so I think that situation in Shanghai and the whole China is like quite a bit like more calm than Europe and other places. Because I think the most tough time for us is from January to early April. So we were in lockdown and many like sad stories and just like everywhere after April. So here the museums and galleries reopen from early May. Then now it's like quite okay situation, but I think we are still in semi-lockdown because foreigners cannot get inside China. And if you are like Chinese citizen, you wanted to come back from foreign countries to Shanghai, you have to like stay in hotels for 2 weeks. Then you can go home or anywhere in China. So that is the situation here now. Yeah.
Okay. Shilfina.
Hello, so I'm currently in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and the pandemic is actually getting more severe. The curve is not going down at all, but also the regulation from the country is not giving any clear instructions. So everyone is kind of just doing it on their own way, taking care for themselves, making sure that they're not infected by the virus, and yes, being tactical in their own way, I guess.
Thank you.
And Gatari is also here. Maybe you can wave, Gatari. Hi.
Hello.
So we did a little introduction, and now everyone is quickly saying how the situation is in the place where they live, and then we'll give the floor to everyone to say something about the subject. So
Okay.
what about Jonmar and Ronald?
Hello everyone, I'm Ronald. This is Jonmar. We're also based in Amsterdam at the moment, and we were like from September on feeling the hit of a second wave of the pandemic here, and that also meant that since last week we're in this sort of semi-lockdown, and it's we're being asked to sort of navigate on our own intuition also a lot to what we can and can't do. And I think for us also that meant we were just running a program, a public program where we invite people to come and experience a work that we made during a festival, but the whole festival also got cancelled. So yeah, we notice a lot of people who live closely around us, friends or colleagues, that it's, we talk a lot about what we can and cannot do. And it also makes, in regards to early spring, makes people a lot more anxious. I think people feel a lot more closed in. The first wave was springtime, a lot of good weather, and Dutch weather doesn't really help with the second wave because it's a lot of rain and gray. So that also plays a lot on the mood of people, how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah.
And then we have Shaela Sharmin from Chittagong in Bangladesh.
Hello,
How is it there?
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see you all. Actually, in Bangladesh, now the situation is like we don't have any COVID situation here. People are really free because we don't have any lockdown going on here. At the beginning in March, when the lockdown was from the government came, at that time people got really frightened, and there were mixed situation. Like some people got really frightened, and some people actually didn't care about the COVID because they said that it will not harm us because it's a very hot country and it has we have lots of immune systems, and most of the people are really young here. And gradually the situation came like we saw that not that much death tolls or not that much people got infected. The rates were really low because people were not actually testing on a large scale. And the situation is not that much changed, but the government was really concerned about the situation of economy here. So it was not possible for the government due to the pressure of lots of, like, we have garments industries, we have like lots of industrial things going on, and the government is expecting that the GDP should rise and it should remain in the same level, which is really high in this sense. So that's why the lockdown actually came to the end. And now the people actually doesn't fear about the COVID anymore. And we can see the elderly people are dying, but most of the cases, young people are actually not much more aware of the COVID, and they are not taking any kind of precautions as well. So if I go outside, I mean, my office is open, though I work in a university, but the university is closed because schools and universities are not allowed to open yet. But at my office and other things, we are taking proper measurements of for the infections, and then we are actually having almost a normal life here. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, Shaela.
Thank you. Okay, so before we go into the next thing, João and I made some guiding questions. They're very simple, but they're just to give everyone a little bit of an idea of our interest. So it is, how did the pandemic change the relation towards food within your practice? Because you're all artists that are working with either edible plants or food, or conversations around food, or larger topics related to food. And how is it to be together around a meal in a time of a lockdown, or a time that most of us are in, where there's maybe no lockdown, but it's still very hard to be together? The third one was, what are possible more sustainable futures for food production? And I think Bakudapan and also Liaoliao think a little bit more about that, because Liaoliao has her exhibition, and Bakudapan is more looking at the larger scale of how people deal with food. And then the last one is, what changed in the way that we look at food delivery or online cooking, or the way we deal with food on a daily basis. Now we give the time to you, because we're talking already too much. So I think it would be nice to start with Shaela. Maybe you can start talking about your experiences and what you want to share with us.
Maaike, how many minutes more or less each, just for us to...
Like, I would say 6 minutes.
Okay, so if you...
Remind me when it's 6 minutes, because I need to speak a lot, you know.
Yeah, because then afterwards, because there's going to be so many overlaps, it's good to keep it.
Yeah.
I'll raise my hand when it's 6 minutes.
Thank you so much. So actually, my work started with I work with spices basically, because in my country, our foods are really really spicy, you know, in Bangladesh, and we really love lots of blending of spices together and mixing them. And the aroma of spices is one vital part of our cuisine. It's vital for every cuisine, I said, but here it's really like so much intense, you know. And also the colors, like we use lots of turmerics and chili powders. So for me, those elements, those spices, those materials became a very vital part of my artwork when I started doing some project. In our initiative, we always initiate an annual um, street show. So I showed there one project which was like spicy story, and I related chilies with omen, because in my sense, the omen, they are hot, and also the chilies are hot. And you see in my country there are some the males. I'm sorry about this word, males or some. I mean, humans are equal to me, but sometimes in my country, the male are actually relates food with women in many contexts. So for me, the food, the connotations, the meanings of all the spices became much more related to the femininity and related to the how people are actually looking at women, maybe can be related to the spices. So I projected, I made one installation, and people were asking why I was, especially it was a street show for the common people and mass populations, the people around, they were actually not familiar with this kind of work. So lots of women, they were getting really interested about why I am using the spices, because it's the women actually cooks in our kitchens. They are the labor of for the cooking and other stuff. So, that's why when women were asking about why I'm using the spices, and I found one relationship with the femininity and spices, and also I started exploring those ideas in my works again and again, and I found that women can actually relate them with the spices, and it became a kind of a protest to me in my work when I just use the spices. And now during the lockdown, it's changed a lot, because I started. I am not the cook in my house, because I have a cook, and but during the lockdown, as she stopped coming here, so I had to become the cook of the house, and my husband was also, and the kids were also helping me, and so the food became something like a very uh, very important integral part of our life, and also my work, because I was starting to rebel with about the spices, because in my kitchen my kids are really like foreign foods. They're like pizzas and ramen and other stuff, which I'm not actually used to cook before. So I started exploring the relationship between the spices of my country, and also the spices of the traditional spices, also the spices of this century. These things were really getting a much more interesting point for me. And I found, especially I was also looking after the things about the oil we use, because I found that the production and the use of oils in my country has also changes, because we are much more drawn to olive oils, which are not our food oil, main food oil. We don't use that much, but it's coming. So I was also exploring the production and the use and what the people consume, and how the product actually works about everywhere. So especially in my countries, that is what I was actually doing during this time, I can say. And I guess I can say more later. Thanks. It's not enough. I think.
Thank you, Shaela. Maybe you can say one more sentence about how it changed your practice, because I'm interested in that also, to hear how your change of living, basically, how that affected also the way that you work with food. Okay. Oh.
It's not only my living. I think there is a major shift here, because in the sense of giving labor in household works, because men now they are cooking a lot in my countries, because they were not used to cook in this country, men. So because it has now we can find YouTube and lots of recipes are in the YouTube. So it's really getting they are getting interested about cooking food, and I think there's a major shift because they are now trying to find what women actually do whole time in the kitchen, because we cook 3 times a day. Yes. Thank you so much.
I'm the
I would say just one.
Okay, one sentence.
That is, I think. Okay,
I'm teasing.
Great.
Thank you, Sheila. That was great to hear.
Yeah,
And I have a few questions for you, but we'll in the next round.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's go to Onkruidenier in Amsterdam.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I think also our work deals a lot around, started off like foraging for plants in the city, looking at how plants have a place, how we can look at the division between nature and culture. And the plant is for us usually a way that we look at the edible dimension of the plant. And the way we share our work is through a story, but also often through taste. And I think that's a lot of the time for us also a very social aspect. So we, with other experts, so a botanist or a gardener or a farmer, that we are always moving about in the city or in outside of the city in the landscape, meeting people, discussing and sharing ideas, or setting up experiments or almost test environments where we sort of try to position our own perspective towards maybe the plant perspective, and then see how we could learn in a different way. And I think in the time of the pandemic, it became increasingly difficult for us to set up meetings or meet people or have digital meetings, but sometimes our work is so connected to a landscape or a tactility. We had to do a lot of rethinking and rejuggling about. And Jonmar, maybe you could tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, also, since the start of the pandemic here in half March, we were, we just finished planning our schedule for the year with exhibitions, public programs. So when the news came that things couldn't go like we hoped they would take place, we had to rethink everything. That meant that we had to talk to there were some organizations like a museum, but also like a festival that we were going to be part of, to rethink how we would share our story, share our work, but also rethink how we would engage an audience. I think in most of the projects it worked out okay-ish.
Some were better than others.
Yes. But maybe it's nice to tell about one specific example of how we had to rethink things and how that influenced the way we were looking for a channel to bring our work. Yeah. Maybe you can say a bit about that.
Sure. Yeah.
I was thinking about Arnhem, the project.
I was working a lot this year in Arnhem. It's a city in the east of the Netherlands, and it's a little community arts festival where they include many different people from the neighborhood in different projects. And we were trying to reframe the urban nature as a usually urban nature in the Netherlands is looked at something that's just green. You look at it, but you don't really use it so much as a resource or as inspiration. So we started to discover all the urban green in this particular part. And because of the lockdown, the people who do the maintenance in the green didn't mow or didn't do any maintenance. So everything got really wild. And that was great for us. That really gave us the chance to harvest a lot of plants. But also we wanted to do that with groups of people, and we were limited to do this with a small amount of people. And at one point, it was clear that all the projects that were planned couldn't be presented in one festival. So the festival decided to bring all the projects and the knowledge that was discovered to a place where people come naturally a lot, because people, and that was a shopping mall where people go shopping for food every day. So our project became part of several shops where they sell food. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so instead of having a festival where people would go themselves, we were bringing the festival to a place where people shop for their daily groceries. And instead of having, sharing a kind of taste or an experience, we also decided to start collaborating with the shop owners in the shopping mall. So in the end, we thought it might be nice to do something different, like create a kind of tea mix based on all the wild plants that are growing in that specific area around the shopping mall. And then we started to collaborate in one specific place mostly, and that was an Indonesian supermarket, Toko
Indra Jaja.
Yeah, and then we created a kind of installation in that shop. And also the shop owner, he was very interested in all the knowledge and stories. And he
sort of mixing sort of knowledge of Dutch herbs with Indonesian herbs, and it became a really fun and warming project eventually. Yeah, and I think we're out of time.
Yes, perfect timing.
It's working well.
It's nice that we can hear a little bit later, a little bit more about how this approach is different than what you did before, you know, and how that relates to the pandemic. Geoffrey, would you like, because you also had to change your way of working quite a bit because of the lockdown and also the situation right now. Can you talk a little bit about how you think at the moment?
Yes. So for me, most of my exhibitions are with either other artists or other people. I sometimes go into a space and cook within the space and have discussions with the participants or the people in the space. And for me, food is a bit of an essential, ephemeral thing that we all experience daily. But for us to pay a certain attention to the details or the things that happen during the cooking, the eating, and then the kind of gathering that it brings, some of the interesting things that I usually look at when I'm having exhibitions. But when the pandemic came around and there was a lockdown, I could see some kind of restrictions. So I could not go out to spaces to have an ordinary exhibition. Things changed quite quickly and became a bit surprising, in quotes. Yeah, but I realized that people were now going towards the internet to connect to the world, and also to people were even ordering food from outside, which normally they would have cooked or gone out to eat the food. But when the lockdown came, I realized that people had to change the ways that they actually live with food. Some other people were complaining that now they are indoors, they are not active, and they have to be eaten. Their food pattern changed. And those are some of the things that I picked out of this pandemic and the lockdown. And before, I used to work with a team, and because of the pandemic, we cannot come around because you have to put on a mask. You cannot hug somebody, even eat together. I try to prepare food that people can come together and eat in a setting or in one, I would say one bowl or together. And you could see that now I have to change the ways of making my exhibitions. But since the lockdown, I've not actually made any food exhibition, but there's a residency, peer residency, where usually I would go and visit and sometimes have a conversation over food with them. And this time when I go, I am a bit restricted because of the notion around the COVID. So it changes the setting and the way of even cooking. Now you have to cook in individual, you have to eat with individual bowls and in separate places. So those are some of the things that I have realized after the lockdown issues. Yeah. And maybe I could talk a bit about how my exhibitions used to go on, as with the discussions are not usually my discussions, but discussions from the artists or the participants who partake in the exhibitions, and it could go in any way. It's not a structured kind of discussion. It's discussions over everything and anything, whether it is about politics or about the importation of food, the use of food. It cuts across all angles. That's what my exhibitions are mostly when it comes to food. And also I try to make food that people are used to in Ghana. Yes, most of the time those are the foods that I deal with. And also I look at the source of the food. I mean the ingredients, and I pay attention to the method of preparation and the mode of service. Yeah, those are all things that I look at in my arts presentation or exhibition with food.
Perfect, timekeeping.
Great, thank you, Geoffrey. I think it's nice to hear from Katari and Shilfina, because it relates. I think it's very closely related. But then you collected recipes during the pandemic, and then after that, we'll close off with Liaoliao, who will have a bit of a broader view. I think it's going to be a nice step.
Maaike, how would you like this? Should I give like 3 minutes to each? And...
No, they can decide. We just unmute both of them and they can just talk for 6
Okay.
Yeah, I can explain a bit about the background of Bakudapan. Then maybe Sylvina can continue for the specific project called VIII. So Bakudapan based in Yogyakarta, as explained by Sylvina, that in Yogyakarta the curve of pandemic is not going down, and we still like struggling with these situations, and somehow this uncertainty also leads us to the other of invisibility, the fear of invisible virus. So somehow like the what is it, like the fear of like crisis are hit us in here, and especially for Indonesian peoples, the government also has the specific policy that called food estate for like to avoid the food crisis that happened during this pandemic, because we can see that this physical mobility distancing is also lead us to the limited of the food chain system, and it shows us how like the food system, the food chain system in Indonesia. And especially in Yogyakarta, there are some of initiatives that started with from the domestic garden or a collective garden, and Bakudapan and our college in Kunci, we also like running. We also started gardening, and we plant some vegetables and some spices in here. Besides for trying kind of like the simulations how to avoid the food crisis, we also seeing the effort to as an attempt to like for the food sustainability, and it also suiting us personally, because the situation in here is like very uncertainty, and people's as many of people's like closing their jobs, and they have to struggles emotionally and financially. And we can see that the garden can be somehow can be seen as figures of solidarity during this pandemic, and that's how Bakudapan started our projects. Since we some of our plans and project have to cancel due this crisis, we started for online project called as a foodemic, because we see that many of peoples in here started to like cooking, home cooking, like home gardening, and they and we can see that that is not only like producing food or like as an attempt to like the food productions, but it also the way how they can be survive, and showing the parallel solidarity among the peoples in here. Maybe Sylvina can explain more about the project.
So the Foodemic is a project that we started on March, on the early stage of the pandemic in Indonesia. We created a page in our website where it is dedicated as a virtual space for people to share recipes and stories. Stories like what Katari have mentioned, stories of the struggle for having no access to food, not having facilities, a well-equipped kitchen, because in here there are actually a lot of people living far away from home in a more smaller spaces, working as a freelancer, for example, or workers in a very precarious way. And so this foodemic itself is a place where people shared, like the struggle itself. And then after that, so they send us recipes, and and then it usually included stories on the breakdown stories on how, for example, the stories came out from the lack of ingredients and how they recreate traditional food, for example, that they're missing due to being away from home, solitude that they're feeling, or like food that they make from their gardens. And then aside from foodemic, we also extended this project with an activity that we called virtual dinner. So in virtual dinner, during the pandemic, we invited people to bring their own food, to bring the food of their pandemic. It can be the food that they like to eat the most. It can be their go-to food when they're stressed because of the pandemic, or it can simply just what they want at that time, which would be still during the pandemic time. And then we gather people, mostly people who don't know each other just yet or don't know each other that much. And then we ask about their food, what are you bringing? And then we kind of bring the discussion in a more reflective way. We ask them to tell more about how do you feel about gathering in a virtual space with people that you don't know. How do you see spaces nowadays? How is it different when meeting with people in a physical space and a virtual space? And then from there, we kind of pull on the discussion to organically grows to, for example, the food chains, like what Katari have mentioned earlier, the discussion about how fragile the food chain it is, that we just kind of realize it more due to the pandemic. And so, yeah, I guess that's it.
Perfect timekeeping.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really great.
And
I think it fits very nicely with Geoffrey, also to maybe speak a little bit more about, and actually with the others too, about also more the tactile side and the tasting and exchange of that side of food. Liao, would you like to say something about your exhibition? And I know you prepared some questions, so that would be great.
Yes, of course. The exhibition I curated in August is called Interrupted Meals. So it's, yeah, interrupted meals. So actually this exhibition is, I was thinking about to do an exhibition about food from the period of pandemic in China, which is to say from January to May, because at that time people are blocked at home and there's a lack of food, and there's also there's like some very I think like very strange like talking that the COVID emerged because people eat bats in China. So I found it's quite interesting, and it's very important for us to rethink about the relationship between us, the human beings, and the food again during this very special and critical time. So in this exhibition, we talked mainly about two parts. So first part is about the relationship between human and food, and nature, where the food comes from. As we all know that in the ancient time that the food is like kind of media that connects people with nature. And then nowadays with more and more engagement of the artificial things, so the food also started to change. that reflects also the transformation of the nature today. So we're also talking about what is the nature today. So in this exhibition, I quote a sentence from Michel's theories, said that the nature today is a set of relationship whose network unifies the whole earth. So it is not only the plants or animals and human beings, so also the artificial things that also interrupted the nature and our life. Then secondly, we also talk about the cooking as a social language. So at this part, we also look back to the history. Here I can see a work from a Chinese artist called Shi Qing. So he made a video work, especially for this exhibition. So he discussed how white sugar come to China in 800 years ago in Ming Dynasty. So at that time, it is, so Ming Dynasty considered as the emergence of the globalization in China, kind of globalization, because there's a global trade at that time already in China. So at that time, it is also a kind of political crisis. So it is an opportunity for the ancient China to go out to the world, to start to connect it with each other. But at that time, I think then after we missed this opportunity, then we come to a time that is more close. So that leads afterwards the revolution and also the communism revolution afterwards. So in this work, we so the artists talk about the history, a brief history of white sugar in China, to rethink about the crisis that we are facing, about the globalization today, that also influenced by the COVID, I think. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is how the exhibition. And I think the artists in this panel, what you have just said is really very interesting for me. So I hope that I would already known you before the exhibition. So, but it's also a good opportunity for me to know more just in this panel. So I also would like to thank Maaike and João to organize this panel. And that's all.
Thanks. Yeah, if you have already a question to them or you would like to comment, be our guest.
Yeah, I think I have to think about a little bit. So maybe we can.
That's very fine. Yeah.
I have a question from the audience. Can I ask to Liaoliao if she thinks that the relationship of food and people will change after the pandemic? Liaoliao. Do you think that the relationship of food and people will change after the pandemic?
I think the relationship between people and food are always changing. And so of course, I think this pandemic brought us a lot of questions about how we treat ourselves and the things that connect with us, means the food, means the nature, and means other people, everything. So yeah, so I think it's really very important and critical time for us to rethink all the relationships and how we react to everything. For example, in China, that after the pandemic, there was really a discussion between people about what we should eat. As I just mentioned, that people strongly criticize that people should not eat wild animals, even it's not absolutely evident to prove that because of someone eats bats, that makes the COVID. But yes, we have to think about what we should eat or not. And also, like what you have mentioned in the theme, in the questions that we were going to discuss in the panel, that about the food delivery, about the food production. Yes, I think it's total complicated but urgent questions to think about.
Yeah. How do you like? How do you want to take this forward, Maaike? Should we get questions like from the panelists to each other and from the audience? And
I mean, I think a thing that if you continue talking about, for instance, the change in our relationship to food, and with the delivery or online dinners. I would like to stick to the online because I think it connects all of us, and we're also online right now. I was hearing the car when Geoffrey was talking. I was hearing the car constantly, and I was hoping that someone would bring you a pizza or something like this, you know, that there would be all of a sudden a food delivery with one of us. But talk like Geoffrey, we spoke a little bit on forehand about how your dinners, how you could still do your dinners, and the same with Bakudapan. We spoke a little bit about like these online dinners and how you, and also actually with Onkruidenier, we spoke about like how do you exchange this very basic level of taste or texture or even being together and the energy that it gives. So the very physical side of food and having a meal together. And I think Bakudapan, you are doing now these online dinners, and I was wondering how, Geoffrey, how you think about it, and also Onkruideniers, how you deal with that part. So maybe Geoffrey, you start.
You on mute.
Yeah. Wait, I'll unmute you. You should add.
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, to talk about how online dinners would work. I've been thinking about it a lot, and it keeps troubling me when I have to think of the fact that someone on the other side will not have the same taste or smell or the feeling that you get when you take maybe simple like onion maybe from Ghana would be different from an onion from India. And when you try to prepare the same dish with someone online, and maybe you've given a list of ingredients, and you're supposed to coordinate it together, there'll be that breakage where the sense of taste and smell and the feeling that you get when you have to how do you call it, when you have to take the food in, I don't know how to relate that, or how to explain that to online or over the internet, that the person opposite would realize exactly how you feel when you taste this kind of food, or what you have prepared within a specific time and how it would feel like when you're taking it at the moment. Yes, and those are things that keep bothering my mind when I think of trying to make a meal over the internet or share a dinner over the internet. That's what I think about whenever.
Would it change your, and this is also to the others, would it change your way of approaching, for instance, your audience? Would it change your questions or like your
Definitely. That's what
you try to engage.
Talking.
And how would you?
Sorry, the sound is breaking.
Okay, we can hear the answer by one of the others. For instance, Jonmar and Ronald, how do you deal with that with your audience with this?
Yeah, very good question. I think also we've been doing a lot of things online, like meeting other people, having meetings, trying to organize things, but in regards to our work with sharing food, I don't think we have made any experience with that. Also, I think a lot of the times, like what Geoffrey also mentioned, it's this sort of sensitivity where in the moment you create a social space where you share something with a group of other people. Yeah, I still haven't found the way how to replicate that through an online system, but we had to think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Also because I think in a lot of the work we do, we take people into a landscape. So the environment in which we experience a taste, a smell, a texture, or a story that we bring is also very important, like the space that we bring people to. And I think in some of the projects that we are currently developing, we are looking to different means or mediums to share an experience. Like there's a museum in Ghent in Belgium where there's an exhibition about colors in relationship to food. And we were invited to create an experience room where people could go to and they would taste things. The exhibition opened one day before the lockdown, so the opening became the
closing.
The closing. But the exhibition got extended and will also travel to another museum in France. And now with the curator, we're exploring how we can translate the experience of the food, of the taste, of the smell to a digital platform like a video or but it will be, yeah, we're talking to the curator about how we can do that without losing too much of the original idea. But still, I believe that we have to rethink the entire experience that we want to bring.
Or should it maybe implement a different question? Like if we can't bring the experience at all, maybe we should rethink the whole model entirely and get a different approach. I also got really inspired about Bakudapan. We visited Jogja in I think 2 years ago, and also seeing in how in Indonesia also with the food system there's this beautiful balance between home cooking, home growing, but also the whole system of ordering something quickly through your phone. It's so much more advanced than how we live in Amsterdam, where if I want to do a takeout, it takes forever to arrive, or and there you just order something what you feel like, and you have a dozen options. So yeah, I also interested in in Amsterdam, for example, people started to stock up food, and the most food people stocked up was canned tomatoes, pasta, and flour, because people started to bake all the time because they needed to spend time. They didn't know what to do at home, so I started baking.
Yeah.
As a past to make the time go by. And
in the entire city, you couldn't find yeast anymore in supermarkets or in the shops because it was all sold out everywhere. So there was a lot of a big increase in home cooking, and yeah, also because yeah, a lot of restaurants got closed, of course, and
but
yeah.
That's an interesting link also to Shaela, and then back to Bakudapan also, because yesterday we spoke a little bit about the fact that not everyone has access to, for instance, the ingredients to cook. But Shaela, I think it's interesting with you that also your the way you spoke about also the gender roles, and that they basically changed a little bit through the pandemic. And or the fact that you started cooking yourself, I think is also very interesting. So maybe linked to what Ronald was saying, you can speak a little bit more.
Yes, actually, the situation of baking was almost like same here, and I started baking. I never used yeast, but I bought lots of bottles of yeast here. So the thing is, the thing which was interesting for me about the gender role of cooking was like men are like started to criticize their wives because it's like they said that among my friends and other, because I was really discussing about food with a lot of people, artists and other people who's actually cooking. So, and they were saying that this is not that hard work. But you know, when so I asked, how many times did you spoil your food while you were cooking? And most of the cases, I found that there are lots of errors while cooking. So I started one project, which was like making recipe of bad cooking, and also so I started with myself that how can I doing one burnt chicken fry, how to make burnt chicken fries and the recipes of it and how to do that. So I started documenting all those things and started taking pictures of myself wearing an apron and my husband wearing an apron. And I asked my friends to do all these things because home cooking was really important here. But you know, the other thing was really interesting, like when the restaurants were open, I mean, it started opening after 3 months because people are really, the street restaurants are really one of the main resource of uh, food for the uh, uh, for most of the people of the lower. I mean, we have class here, so you can actually go through. You can actually, I mean, examine the food habits of the classes as well. How the poor peoples actually reacted to the food, and also how the middle classes like us reacted to the food. Those things are also really interesting for me. So I started like taking pictures of my cook. She's from very, I mean, her husband had died before the pandemic, and she has 4 children. So she cannot stay home because she is depending on for her food from my home. So I had to bring her back because of those kids, that they can also have food in their houses. So when she came, I gave my apron to her to wear, and I took pictures of her. And the relationship between the class and the gender, it was so interesting. So I planned doing a whole documentation of it. And also I was planning to do some create, actually I'm working on it, to create a blog about this, to discuss about these roles in the society, what is going on actually here, and how the families are responding, and how the people, and female and male, and also I am including, like, I have a daughter who's 10 years old, and I have a son who is 18 years old, so they have also other perspectives about food. As I was incorporating their ideas as well, documenting them, the whole thing actually.
Sheila, I have a question from the audience. If you're aware of government initiatives to provide food to the poor during the lockdown?
Yeah, during the first month, there was a lot of chaos here. Like the people who actually, there are lots of people who actually work in daily basis. And they were complaining about they don't have food in their homes. So the government provided food for them, and they said that, so it was lockdown. So people were actually not supposed to come outside their home to for anything. But you know, there were people who were donating food to those people. So the streets were really crowded with lots of people who wants actually food things. I myself donated lots of food to my neighbors, the poor neighbors, and the government took really one initiative was really very good for the government. Like they were handling very carefully uh, about the price of the foods, and they're controlling it so nicely. So it was not, it didn't raise at that time. But now the food are really very much selling in high prices. I think we have the syndicates of food chain who are actually doing some business now. They started doing it, and government is handling all these things very much carefully, I guess. Yeah.
Maybe, Bakudapan, maybe you can talk a little bit also about this class and gender and accessibility to food with your recipe project.
Okay, so maybe I'm going to start with like the recipe project first, and maybe Katari will continue with like how it relates to the class and gender issues in Indonesian context. So like, I think it kind of relates to what Geoffrey already mentioned about how bringing the, like, for example, dinner activity to in a virtual or online platform. What we learned, like, when we had this virtual dinner, which is an extension of the Foodemic site where people share recipes. From there, we get to know how people are able to change some things. You know, for example, they can change their diet from if they usually cook in a more preparations, then maybe during the pandemic they just like to do it in a quickly way, in an instant way, in a cheaper way. And so from there, during the virtual dinner, we like to reflect on that, on how our diet changed, for example, on how our habits in collecting food and ingredients change. But then there are also some things that cannot be changed, that cannot be substituted with something else. For example, like the experience of the body and the space, you know. And that's actually what we like to talk about in the virtual dinner, how we can't deny that at first it's so awkward to talk about a food that you cannot taste with each other. You cannot even smell the food, you know. You can only imagine how it is. And those are probably the things that we like to reflect on during the virtual dinner and the overall of Foodemic project. And maybe Katari would like to add?
Yes. I just adding from Silvina that basically in Indonesia we have now we are facing like the difficult situations not against but like comparing the government narrations about the food productions, especially in this crisis, in this pandemic situations. According to Sylvina's explanations, that many of people had changed their habit to producing the food, and before the pandemic, many of people are depending their food products into the market, Like as we know that we are have the big market, the production mass of food that supplied by the certain of company, and many people, especially who living in the city, are depending on that systems, on that food chain systems. And then when the pandemic's coming, we had to face the reality that the food system, the food chain system is getting worse. I mean, like because of the company had no idea to distribute the food, and the price of the food are getting higher and higher day by day in the early of pandemic, and people are starting the way how they producing the food, that beforehand they have to depending on the big mass productions and the technology, because if the food mass production, they have to reach the higher number of productions that the standard from the government and the company. But if we are starting from our house, our home garden, we don't have to get glued at that number or at that standard. So we are getting back, it brings us back to the traditional way of gardening. So using our hands to like growing the plants, and it also give us the what's like the soothing therapies for us, but also it calling back the memory of the knowledge that already gone for so long, especially for the peoples who are living in the city, who are they not familiar with the food productions. And since that situations, that conditions, many of especially like I can see on my Instagrams, many of people are starting to recook their home recipe, and also they are starting to growing their home land plants. And it really and we saw as a Bakudapan, we wanted to see like how far this crisis or like these physical limitations can showing us that this is the day or this is the moments for peoples or like for the food chain system are going back to the domestic level. And it shows us how this food production system has to be back to the hands of mother. Like I mean, the mother is kind of yeah, like the figure of who caretaking of the plants and of the food. Because in Indonesia we have that kind of myth that the rice is coming from Dewi Sri. It's kind of the myth that what is it? The lady who are growing the rice from their stomach, and we believe that we got that, and we call it as a mother earth. So it's kind of the mythical, traditional mythical that has relations and has high aligning on the how the peoples are depending on uh, the domestic and the female figure.
Great.
Thank you, Gatari. And, I wanted to ask a question to Liaoliao. That
yeah, we still have 5 minutes or something.
we have 5 minutes.
Just for the.
Can we use 3 of these 5?
Yeah, no, totally. Just for everyone to know, it's going fast.
No, I like to. I mean, I think before this panel, like I'm reasonably connected with the aware of the food system, and it happens, and how it's connected to everything else, and even like a political dimension. But it's easy to forget, and sometimes like it's limited to me going to my regular restaurant here and noticing that my favorite dessert is no longer available and me getting upset as a kid would be, and not really like thinking about what it represents. So when Liaoliao talked about the relationship between the virus, what we eat, maybe this even has like a political dimension, isn't it? This like attribution of responsibility for the COVID and the virus and the food habits, and also like the food as a media that connects us with nature. And I don't know if you could just like expand a bit on your ideas. That would be great.
Yes, I think maybe I can start with the questions that appeared just now again. The relationship between human and food, will that change after the COVID? Because I just thought about one work in the exhibition. The artist, he draw like copied a book called Shanghai Wild Edible Plants in 1961. So at that time, it is what we called is the 3 years of hunger in China. So 3 years of famine in China period. So at that time,
what's the name of the book, please?
The book is called Shanghai's Wild Edible Plants.
Right.
So in this book, the government draws all the wild plants that can be eaten during this time of hunger, of famine. So I think this is the crisis. It is because in China at that time, we think it is the government told everyone that this is a crisis brought by nature, by the like by rain, but actually it is the crisis. It is a political crisis. So I think every time when we are facing this kind of political crisis, we seek the possibility of survive to nature. I think today too. So especially in this situation, I think everyone kind of developed some like skills of cooking at home, for me, myself, and my friends too. So some of them I know that they never cook and they never go to the market, but afterwards they gain this skill. And so I think this is a quite good approach to the relationship between human and nature through food. And also we were talking about the possibility of lack of food in China in the coming like years because of COVID. But now I think the discussion is kind of not so much now, but in the previous months, quite many people are talking about this. So even some of them are like bought a lot of rice at home because we have this kind of such like memories of poverty, especially the older generation. Yeah, so I think this is something that the food and nature is always around. Is always around us. Is always like in our mind, that when we are facing some kind of difficulty, the minimum thing to live with is the nature finally.
Liaoliao, is this relationship between food and politics, it seems like from us hearing it, that perhaps is more clear in China than I don't really, maybe it's just me, but I don't feel that as clear in Brazil, the relationship between politics and food. And is it like, do you think it's your own personal take, or do you think that's a more general thing?
I think it is something that that already started from the new China, because we have such economy of I don't know how to express that in English, but after the new China, that everything is controlled by the government. So especially the economy, the food, everything. Then after I think it's 1978. So China reopened, and it's called a reformation of the economy. So this kind of control is less, but it still exists. For example, we also control the price of food and control the supply of food, and also control the percentage of import of food. For example, we have the economic fighting with the US now. So one of the very important topic is the food. The import of the food from the US too. So yeah, it is, I think it is always there. So for example, the fight between the Chinese government and US also influenced the price that we buy food for everyone. So yeah, I think it's yeah, always here.
Liaoliao, and back to that book you mentioned. So the idea of the book was to show the population of Shanghai what were the natural wild plants that were available for them previously.
Yeah, and everyone can find and eat. Yeah.
And how they could be used as a resource to eat and grow home during the crisis.
Yeah. So some of the plants that we feel very strange today, no, I think most of the plants, for example, when I was reading the book, I find that I know none of them. Actually, we haven't tasted any one of them, but they were still there. That they can be kind of resource that for human to survive one day when you have nothing to eat.
Very interesting. Well, I'm trying not to look at the watch, but I can't help. So we could forget and continue the conversation. But well, it's been a great panel, and thank you for everyone. Thank you for the contributions. I have look, my notes. I have. I've been learning. If you're being okay. Yeah, lots of things I would have liked to ask. We don't have enough time, unfortunately. And if you are open, the panelists, I would love to get deeper into your subjects and your experience, and I will invite you to a one-to-one live if you have time for that. That would be great, so we can explore with each one of you a bit more about what you have to share. I'll do that by email afterwards. And this is recorded, is going to be uploaded in the YouTube of Arca. It's in the link. If anyone who is here and is not in our mailing list and want to be invited for the next one by email, please share the email address in the chat. And I think Maaike.
Yeah, thank you all, I would say. And thanks for all the comments also from the audience. I see some interesting things still being added. The next one is in a month, and we're going to talk about the environment and COVID and artistic practice. But you'll see, add your name to the mailing list, and we'll see you then, hopefully. And all the panelists, thank you so much. It was wonderful to meet you. And we hope to have you back in one of the panels, but we never really know where it goes. So for now, thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. It's really nice meeting all of you.
Yeah.